Hi, I'm Executive Director Nina DeLeo, and I want to welcome you to the 45th Annual Victoria Bach Festival. Tonight we're pleased to welcome Stephen Redfield, Concertmaster of our VBF Orchestra, who's been with us for many of those 45 years. Stephen joined in 1992, and his artistry is a big part of what makes the VBF Orchestra's unique sound. We're grateful for his nearly 30 years of music making with the Victoria Bach Festival. Tonight, he'll be joined by some friends from the orchestra to look back at some Victoria Bach Festival performances, to talk about period instrument practices, and to listen to his recent recordings of movements from Bach's second partita for violin. We want to thank tonight's sponsor, Janet Miller. Janet is a longtime supporter of the Victoria Bach Festival, and we're so grateful for her support. Our season sponsors are the O'Connor and Hewitt Foundation, the City of Victoria, and the Texas Commission on the Arts. The Texas Commission on the Arts is doing an amazing job of supporting arts organizations from around the state of Texas during this difficult time, and we thank them for their support. And now I'm very pleased to welcome Stephen Redfield. Hi, Stephen.
Hello, Nina. So nice to see you.
How are you? Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Eugene, Oregon. I'm actually in my mother's living room, and I'm here visiting her at a time I'd usually be in Victoria, and I'm awfully sorry I'm not there with you at this time.
We absolutely miss you and all of our orchestral musicians. So tell us a little bit about what we're going to hear tonight.
We're going to hear some of my favorite piece that I was preparing to perform this festival, the D minor partita by Bach. And that's a solo violin work which Alejandro had planned to break up into parts in between some choral works by Bach. We're also going to hear two movements of favorite performances that I recall. And one is from the St. Matthew Passion by Bach, and the other is from the Missa Solemnis by Beethoven. I think you'll really like them.
Fabulous. And so what are we starting with first?
We're going to start with the solo Bach, and that is the first movement, Allamanda, from this classic dance suite. The Allamanda is a German dance which often started a classic Bach suite of dances. I hope you like it. So I hope you enjoyed that, the Allamanda from the D minor partita. It has a little bit of the sadness and the thoughtfulness. I feel myself in the first year, in 29 years, that I'm not in Victoria playing in the Bach Festival. I'm so much a part of Victoria, and Victoria feels like so much a part of me because I've been welcomed year after year so warmly every June. I almost feel like an honorary citizen. At first, when I came to Victoria, I was a bit surprised to find such quality music making there and so many devoted patrons, but I came to expect it after that and looked forward to it year after year. I don't know if you noticed, but that partita movement was performed on Baroque violin, which means it was performed in the style most likely that Bach heard it himself. The violin has advanced in many ways since that time, and I play on a violin which I've set up to be more like Bach's violin. I've been doing this for a while. It's called period performance, and in the festival, I was joined by two wonderful violists, Suzanna Giordano and Melissa Brewer, who also play period instruments, and I'd like to welcome them into this conversation. Together, we'll talk a little bit more about period performance. They are part of the team that championed period performance about 10 years ago into the Victoria Bach Festival. We play with a lower pitch, with a warmer sound, with gut strings, with an authentic style approach. Susannah, when did you begin playing Baroque viola?
Well, actually, it was after college. I was asked to play in a group to substitute for a violin player, actually. And I said, Baroque, And I tell you what, the bug bit me. And after that, I just tried to get as much information as I could, went to festivals, Longy, Amherst, Oberlin. I even went to England at the Cambridge Early Music Festival there just to really embrace it and to learn as much as I possibly could. And then just started getting work in the Los Angeles area, playing Baroque and meeting people and meeting you and just going everywhere and doing everything. So it most of the people nowadays they have college courses on this, but back when I was in school, I didn't see it, but now it's offered everywhere, and it's just so incredible that these kids nowadays can have that. So yeah, that's when I started.
Melissa, what about performance practice attracts you about playing Baroque viola in a group?
Well, I came to it, being a modern player, and got introduced to it actually when I moved to Tuscaloosa and met my husband up there, who was a harpsichordist. And what immediately hit me was the ability to be more expressive. The sound quality of the instrument, and then playing in chamber music, but then also moving into playing in orchestras, just the smaller size, more communication with my colleagues, having to take more ownership of my playing, because you're not part of a section of 8, you're maybe 1 or 2. So all of those things.
Wonderful.
Pluses.
Yeah, I feel like it brings me closer to the composer. I feel aesthetically I'm speaking the language a little more completely and, I don't know, expertly. And I just love the way it brings me closer to the music. We played a lot of concerts in Victoria standing up. And I remember when we first did that, the audience reaction was sort of surprise and enthusiasm. so much energy and so much communication between you, and you seem so joyous. And we thought, well, of course, we are joyous and we do have energy and we love to communicate. And it makes it easier, I think, to stand and play and to have no conductor leading us, but to have to play together without the aid of a conductor. But then Craig became quite interested in historically informed performance, and he conducted us in several pieces, including one of my favorites, which I think we'll listen to next. It was the 2014 St. Matthew Passion, as I said earlier, which is an epic 3-hour narrative work. It's so inspiring and so moving in power and beauty. And for me, I loved sharing this approach with Craig because he was very fresh to it and he was very open to it. And we were sort of experts in a certain way that he was learning from. And it was a beautiful communication between us, I thought it was. Then working with the Conspirare choir and the beautiful soloists who stepped forward from the choir to sing, all of that was really just so inspiring. And one thing I remember about this is feeling so intimately connected to Laura Mercado Wright and the conductor in this particular piece, Erbarmedi. Just that little triangle of us up at the front, along with the basses and the strings around. It was a beautiful, beautiful experience and very memorable to me. And looking at the video, I can see the whole ensemble sort of focused on the music and feeling the support of the whole ensemble. It was just a beautiful thing. What do you remember, Susannah, about this? Would you like to share something about our this moment in the piece?
Yes, I mean, Bach writes this piece the last few days of Christ's life, his sufferings. And at this moment in time in the big piece, he pauses everything to reflect on Peter, who just denied knowing Christ 3 times. The cock crows, and his words fulfill what Jesus had said to the apostles. So Peter, his humility, his fear, his agony, and it's calling, like all of us, for self-reflection. And the text of this particular movement: have mercy, my God, for the sake of my tears. Look here, heart and eyes weep bitterly before you. Have mercy, have mercy. And the violin part, you played beautifully, is equal to the vocalist's part. And your part, Stephen, the violin part, was weeping along with the soloist, and it was so powerful. It pierces to your heart. And the orchestra one people were behind you playing this lush pad of strings. And one thing I really loved were the cellists and the bass when they're plucking their strings, and that was to represent Peter's tears flowing from his eyes, coming down his face. So it's just an amazing, beautiful. I mean, Bach, he considered his St. Matthew Passion probably his best work, and many people believe this particular movement was the best of that. So I'm so glad you picked it, because it's just like an incredible movement, and how he puts it together, and it's gorgeous. So yeah.
You've given us a terrific lead into the performance. I'm really happy with the information you shared. So how about let's listen to Erbarmedi now.
Okay.
Well, after Peter's agony of denying Jesus 3 times, that chorale to me is redemption. The ending words are, "But thy mercy and thy grace are much greater than the failings which I ever find within me." And what a hopeful message for all of us.
That's true. Beautiful. I thought we might go back to some more of the partita for a little while, unless there are any further words about the Erbarme dich. We're about to hear the second dance in the dance suite, the Corrente. This is a dance with a running step, so it's a very quick one. And if you're trying your best to follow the manuscript, your eyes must indeed move very quickly. Enjoy the Corrente. That was the Corrente of the D minor partita for solo violin by Bach. It was one of the things I was looking forward to playing this year at the Victoria Bach Festival, but we have to make do with the recording tonight. If you were looking at the screen, you saw a copy of Bach's 1720 autograph manuscript from which I perform. And it's quite beautiful to look at. I think Alejandro may have already mentioned in some of the notes how the lines curve so beautifully in his manuscript. And it's just set beautifully and not crowded and never crossed out. And it's really lovely. You'll even see my fingerings and bowings on that copy, which is being broadcast. Susannah, why do we prefer to play from manuscript copies, even when modern editions are available to us?
Well, I believe there's so many reasons for so many different people. I mean, closer to the composer's hand. I mean, that's what we're trying to do as, historically informed performances. Not only are we trying to do play this music with the correct tuning, lower the strings, the tension of the bow, the different bow, but when you have a piece of music that all of a sudden is going to go through editors and time, and with their 2 cents of phrasing and bowings and everything, it kind of changes what the composer intended for us to hear. So not only does it look beautiful, and if you can get it with the actual composer's own penmanship, I should say, that's even better. But I think, don't you feel like most of the time when pieces of music go through different editors, it changes, like playing telephone? It's like, but by the time you get it, the whole message is completely different than what it was in the beginning. Don't you feel like that, Melissa?
Absolutely. Modern editions just add so much garbage that gets in the way of the composer's intent. Crescendos, diminuendos, accent marks, bowings are for me, the biggest detriment to actually bringing forth what the composer intended. I think especially when we're doing choral works, because without all the extra new edition markings, you have to rely on the text, and the text informs how you play the music.
Exactly. And so to remove editor's markings is to remove a layer of someone else's interpretation and reveal more what the composer might have suggested himself, without any interpretation, no layers in between you and the composer. And the manuscript will reveal what the composer wrote with, for better or worse, as little or as much as he wrote. And so it really just gives you the confidence that you have his word and you're going on his information. We'll come back to more partita in a little while. I thought I would share another memorable performance, and this one is from 2013, the Beethoven Missa Solemnis. And this is another epic choral work with another lovely violin solo. And forgive me, but that happens to make it quite memorable to me. So I've chosen another solo movement from the Missa Solemnis, the Benedictus Movement. And the solo violin has a beautiful, beautiful way it's set up to enter. And I thought Melissa could tell me a little bit about her interpretation of that.
Well, it ends, it begins with the ending of the Sanctus, I think. And the Beethoven has laid up this beautiful pad of sound with a descending line in divisi violas, double in the clarinets. And then there's a pad of cellos, contrabass, and then also bassoon and a contrabassoon, which is really unusual for Beethoven. He uses it in Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, but it's not something that you see a lot during this classical time period. And it lays down, for me, it is so evocative of earth. We're laying down earth, and for you to descend in this amazing 2-octave scale. It's a scale. Kids, you have to practice your scales and your arpeggios, because Beethoven uses them primarily in this piece and of course in the concerto as well. But you will not know that they're scales. They're so beautiful, and you played this so incredibly. What a gorgeous, gorgeous velvety sound at the top of the instrument. It's exquisite.
My understanding is it might represent the Holy Spirit descending to earth. So you described the sound of that earth, and then this extremely high violin solo with a slow scalar descent might might represent that sort of picture of the Holy Spirit descending to earth. Well, what I loved about seeing this video, and I hope you like it too, was seeing the chorus and seeing the whole orchestra. And within the chorus are our longtime friends at the Victoria Bach Festival. They are members of the board, and they are longtime patrons and members of the audience. And they are the very people we went to parties with afterwards, and who threw the parties for us. And the very reason why we came to Victoria for all these years, and why we'll keep coming to Victoria. Those are the people singing in the chorus. And I just thought that was a beautiful thing to see. When I play, I'm really looking at my music, and I'm looking at Craig, and I'm not looking back at the chorus at all. But to see them there watching over, and to hear them sing and contribute, it was just a beautiful memory of what a family we have in Victoria. The Bach Festival truly is a family, and we're all part of that family. So maybe we can listen to the Benedictus and notice those wonderful chorus members, our family in Victoria. That was so enjoyable to hear the Benedictus from the Missa Solemnis. What a memorable performance. I just loved it. And someone else I know who loved that performance was my longtime host, John Bierman, who passed away this last January. He and his wife, Beryl, housed me for all of the 29 years that I came. And this year, I don't know what I would have done. I wouldn't have been able to stay with them, and I wouldn't have seen John. And they're really my second family. Susannah, you knew John as long as I did, almost.
Almost. And he was such a big supporter, not only of you, who I bet you he thought of you as another son, but he would always be in that back hallway greeting us after our performances with big old hugs and just beautiful things to say. And he was just so supportive, and he always had that charm and always wanted to take us out for barbecue to his special place 20 miles out of town, and so proud of his relationships with us. And we certainly were so happy to be a part of his family, the Victoria Bach Festival family. And I just have such wonderful memories every year of John and Beryl, and I sure am going to miss John for sure.
Yeah. Melissa, you remember John too?
I do. I didn't know John as well as both of you, but my big memory of John, and Susannah mentioned it, is the big barbecue party on Saturday afternoons before the Saturday concert, driving out to Fannin, to McMillan's, and Louis McMillan would have all this food on the table, and it was amazing just to sit down as family. I meant to take a picture and send it to Nina so she could pop it up, but I forgot to do that.
And before we could wipe our mouth with a napkin, John had paid for everything.
Yes.
And it was just so generous.
So generous.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing John used to say is there was entirely too much modern music in the Bach Festival. And he would say, I mean, I would think Beethoven was about his limit, really. And so he'd always say, let's get back to Bach. So I thought we would get back to Bach right now. We'll go to the Sarabanda from the partita in D minor we've been listening to. that was the sarabanda from the D minor partita for solo violin. And it's a piece I studied early in my time at school. And I really love it. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to me too that Craig Johnson has joined us in our conversation tonight about this music and about the Victoria Bach Festival. And I just wanted to say welcome to you and thank you for all you contributed to the many, many years we enjoyed working with you in the Victoria Bach Festival. You really made it what it was to us and what it's become. It's really a wonderful thing that you did.
Thank you, Stephen, so much. It's so great to be with all of you and to be with those who are listening, either in this moment or later, an archived version, and it feels really special. I felt running. I'm in my car, but I had a meeting, and that's why I couldn't be joining for the full event tonight. A commitment I couldn't change, and but I was eager to get here because just what you're saying, and the memories for me are so extraordinarily special, and the music making has always been at such a high level, and I am particularly moved remembering, of course, I have partita stories. Because some people who are listening, there might be a few who know, but I don't even know if Melissa and Susannah really do know about our Bach trip. But early in our time, like probably the 4th or 5th year that I was artistic director of the Victoria Bach Festival, a bunch of us took a trip to the cities of Bach. It was kind of, I think, called the Cities of Bach tour. And we were talking about a motley crew. I mean, we were, we'd hop on these buses, and it was just a lot of beautiful, beautiful dear friends from Victoria, people who'd been coming to concerts for years. And of course, our beloved Dottie Welton was at the helm, telling the bus driver exactly where to drive all around Germany. And but the partita part about this story, and I won't go into so long, but there was a lovely tour guide. He was a younger guy, let's just say one of the newer guides with this company, and for whatever reason, we kept getting to all these very important places in the city of Bach, like just after they closed. So like the birthplace of Bach, I don't know if you remember, we're in Eisenach, Bach's birthplace, and we get there, I think, like at 4:50 or something, and 4:55, or we're walking up, and the place closed at 4:30. And this young guide would give us this sad look. And then Paul Bowman, a wonderful fellow who just died in the last year at 103 years old, but he was a beautiful choral musician and a big Bach lover. He was kind of my partner in crime there, telling stories. But either he or I would just, in those moments, when all of our tour guests would just look deflated all this way, and here we are in Eisenach, and we can't even see the museum, and then Paul would say, "Stephen, play a partita." So we'd be in the staircase, like out, just and then he would play so beautifully on the spot, on command. And I think that happened, I think, in 3 different places. So anyway, partitas and the Victoria Bach Festival have a lot of non-musical silly stories like that too, but you've always played them with such grace and care, and so I'm just eager to do more listening. Anyway, it's great to see you all. And I always would say too, since you guys have been chatting, I won't jabber on here forever, but just to say, I was really reflecting on the very beautiful sort of chamber music spirit that has always pervaded the Bach Festival, and that was really important to me. As a conductor, I always wanted to feel like a facilitator and a partner and an engaging partner, but sort of not a top-down kind of conducting and leading. And you guys always opened that door to me. I mean, I a tear forming as I say it now, just because it was so special. I felt like I was really in that chamber music circle with you. Even when we had 250 musicians, I felt like I was right there. We were really listening to each other and responding. And I mean, it's in my heart, in one of the most special places reserved for like life events and important things. So thank you guys for that so
You're
much.
so welcome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. You made the invitation to us, and it came both ways, really. We loved being part of that with you, really.
Absolutely.
And I've played a partita on the stage of the Leipzig Gewandhaus after it closed, with just a few people hanging around. So that's one of my things I remember about that trip. It was wonderful.
Oh, that's good.
This,
Good to have a hit.
yeah. So this Sarabanda that we just listened to is a really sort of a tragic sounding piece because, as my teacher told me, it has this sad descending fifths, these beautiful descending fifths that sort of sound like the loneliest interval there is in music when it was in this piece and in Bach's hands. And it almost has a hopeless and empty quality. But when I was playing it this past week, I thought to myself, well, I feel like I'm more determined than that, and I want to give it an intensity that's not just tragic and sort of sad, but strong and standing up and firm. And so I don't know if you noticed the quality of that in my playing, but I gave it a shot. Susanna, did you play this piece when you were a violinist?
I played this partita in college, but not the chaconne. Too hard. I do remember a lot of all of these movements and having to manage your bow, to get all four strings or and lean on the note at the top or whatever the case may be, and just really diving into it to see what Bach wanted to say and all this, counter or contrapuntal stuff around it. It's pretty amazing to this music is amazing.
Yeah, it was a challenge, as I mentioned, performing it because I'm not usually recording. I'm usually performing on a stage, and I usually have the response of the audience before me, and I also have a sort of a moment to be my best. And in that situation, I rarely look back and I rarely think twice. I'm just there. But in a recording situation, as it was in this case, for preparing for this broadcast, I was full of second thoughts and I was full of, I don't know, disappointments. I did look back and I was awfully nervous that I would never make it to the end of the movement without really tripping over myself. And even in those very places you mentioned, the string crossings and all the counterpoint, I don't know, Melissa, do you record sometimes? Do you have the same sort of feeling between recording and performing in person and live?
Oh, absolutely. Even just recording myself, because I like to do that just to, since I don't have a teacher that I'm working with, just to record myself, listen back to hear what I'm doing. Yeah, it's very humbling. And I find myself, even though nobody's going to listen to it, it's just for me getting nervous. So I can imagine.
Yes, it was a little nerve-wracking. Craig, do you record yourself when you play sometimes?
Yeah. No, I'm really tuning in when you speak about that and how powerful the mind is all of a sudden when oh, I guess I could redo this over and over and over again. It sort of, when it kind of plays into all those perfectionistic / insecure tendencies that we all have as human beings, and we want to get it right. We want to speak the thing of its essence. But yeah, I do, Stephen. What came up for me as you were all speaking about that too was just kind of a reminder of the vital role that an audience plays in that kind of performance creation, if you will. Just when you said that, I thought, yes, the audience is there holding that space, holding that energetic field. It's a role that they play. It's not just a passive role. and we all benefit from that, right? I think
Yes.
it's powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're not playing to the vacuum or
Yes.
in a vacuum. Yeah.
Yes. Well,
Right.
we miss it very much this year, in particular, and we miss the Bach Festival audience in particular at this moment. And so, with that, why don't we listen to me finish off this part of the partita, the giga, the fourth movement, which has the counterpoint and the string crossings, and a lot of nervous energy on my part. Go ahead. Thank you so much for joining us to listen to that Giga. The last part we'll play from the partita in D minor. As you can see, Nina has joined us again, and I want to thank all of you, Melissa, Susanna, Craig, and Nina, for joining me in reflecting on this music and on the festival. And thank you especially for all the years of sharing your beautiful musicianship and your friendships with me in Victoria, and letting me be a part of the Victoria family and all of the things that entails.
Stephen, I'll just get one last word in to say, I know this is something that you can't say, of course, but since this program has featured you significantly too, it's really wonderful. And from my chair as a former music director and a conductor that know so much kind of intimately about what's going on, you know, there were so many years of building. Certainly your solo playing is what we've gotten to enjoy tonight, which has been so exquisite and always has been, and your dedication to detail and also the larger arc and the essence of something really speaking. So all that's been just golden part of your sort of heart portfolio always as a musician, but really the dedication to over all these years, you know, we got to really build this orchestra, really everyone on this call, to build this orchestra together over the years. And certainly from that concertmaster position, you know, I get it, what it is to really develop a culture. I mean, I don't know that anyone could really understand. It's not like dropping a bunch of talented people in together and then go play together, but it's such a relational work that we do. And, you know, you, from the string and overall strings and winds and everything perspective, to be such a co-shaper of that over these years, and really establishing practices for the culture. And then all of us just joined into that too. We enjoyed it so much. And so it's exciting to hear your solo works featured, but also just from that ensemble perspective, to know all that you did to lead in that way, and each of you. And of course, this most gorgeous viola section the world has ever known. So that's just how I feel. So, and thanks for letting me be a small part of this evening too. It's been really special.
Thank you very much. And thanks everyone. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Russell.
Welcome. Well, we do have a few questions, and I just want to say too that, you know, the Victoria Bach Festival Orchestra really does have a very unique sound, and I'm always amazed by the way it comes together in so few rehearsals. But a lot of that is from that leadership from Stephen, just that silky, elegant sound and the energy that comes from that leadership. And so we're just amazed to have you come to Victoria and make this music every year, and we look forward to having you back in Victoria in 2021. But we have a few questions. We have one from Boel, who's asking about a piece of advice for a young professional or student who's just beginning to develop an interest in period instrument performance. What would be your advice to a young person interested in period instrument performance? Maybe we'll start with Stephen.
I could start by saying to do a lot of listening is a very healthy thing. To listen to a lot of interpretations of the period music that they're interested in playing. So in the case of tonight, some Bach, or if it's Handel, and try to let the sound of the instrument and the music infect you, and absorb the sound and absorb the aesthetic, which might at first seem a little foreign and a little strange, but I think is the true expression in the music, and will likely be very effective in the listening.
That's beautiful. Would you like to add anything, Melissa?
I agree. I was going to mention listening, also getting used to playing at that lower pitch. I remember when I first started, you know, if you've played for years and you know what an F sharp or a G sounds like and feels like, it sounds and feels very different a half step lower. So practicing with the tuner just really getting into that lower pitch sound is really important.
We have another question here about playing off the manuscript. You were speaking earlier about the joy of playing off of the manuscript in Bach's handwriting. And so there was a question about, do you play differently, or what is that feeling of playing off of a manuscript, a handwritten manuscript versus an edited edition? Susannah, we touched on this a little bit, but do you have a response to that maybe?
Well, I think when you look at it, it's kind of like you've got this like secret invitation back to Bach, for instance. And for me, it's like you feel a little bit more special. It's like you're seeing something that came out of his quill. But as far as playing, perhaps that it reflects upon trying harder. Perhaps, I don't know, but I think playing off of Bach's manuscript, it's just more fulfilling as a historically informed, if that's what you're trying to do, and to see how he did it. And there are differences between the original and editions later. So, and I was, as Stephen was playing, I was looking at, I have an edition where below is the actual Bach's markings, and above is some other violinist. And Stephen was doing the bottom one, and it totally made sense. And if you looked at the upper, you would see that it was different. And had Stephen played it with that one, it would be completely different and not what Bach wanted. So I don't know. I just think it goes straight to the heart with me.
Beautiful. We have a question here on vibrato and Baroque music. And Stephen, maybe you can speak a little bit to your philosophy on using vibrato for Baroque performance.
Well, I love to use vibrato to warm up a very important note, and to emphasize a bass note, for instance. A lot of times we'll use less vibrato, but some vibrato on long notes in this sort of a shape, a pourdevoix. On bass notes, we probably will use a little vibrato, not as much as Brahms or Beethoven even, but some to warm the sound. And otherwise, it can be more pure and beautiful without a constant vibrato going. It can, the sound can be more direct and more pure and more unaffected if the vibrato is minimized. So some vibrato, but not too much, and in the right places. Is that too much to ask?
I think these
and in an ensemble without an orchestra not using vibrato, you get to hear much more of the overtones.
That's right.
So the whole composite of the sound, that's even more than the sum of its parts.
That's so true.
Well, tonight has been so lovely looking back and just having all of these reminiscences. We do have one more question. Maybe we can close with this. For Baroque music, there maybe is sometimes a tendency for some pieces that can have some improvisation in them or some cadenzas. And kind of what's your approach to coming up with those parts in a piece of music?
Well, personally, I'm hesitant to add much to Bach at all. Many of his pieces have what you might call ornamentation written in. And but there are other composers, earlier Italian and German composers, and who leave a very sparse score, and they've expected a lot of elaboration. And without it, it sounds quite barren indeed. So you have to know what kind of music you're looking at and what's called for in the style. French music is very famous for having excessive ornament, and almost all written in. And every ornament, every variety of ornament has its very special definition. And so but that's French music. If you look at an Italian score, you'll see many, many blank areas where ornament should be provided. So that's my approach. What about Melissa and Susanna?
Violas don't get to ornament. Violas don't get to ornament.
So they'll be quiet.
Yes, exactly.
That's the buck.
Well, it's interesting,
commission
isn't it, with the
viola ornamentation only.
it is interesting though with the Bach Festival. I mean, Baroque music in general is a place where there is a spirit of improvisation which was so alive and present. I mean, we think of a Baroque era as extremely, it's many decades, but with Bach's music, there's a spirit of improvisation. But as Stephen said, it feels there aren't a lot of occasions. I mean, he wrote things so precisely and so clearly that this is not a repertoire in which we improvise a lot, and even from a vocal perspective too, it's a world of difference between a Handel oratorio aria for singer or a Bach aria. And I think a lot of young singers will come in and they're used to doing lots of ornamentation on the return of a ABA section and a Handel aria, and so they're just kind of accustomed to that, and they'll come if they're a new Bach singer too, and you'll hear that, and it sort of just goes against our sort of way of thinking how the music ought to be shared with Bach, because it's quite literally just sort of perfect as it is, but the spirit of that freedom and improvisation is so present, but not literally.
Yeah, beautifully said.
Beautiful expression, yeah. Well, it's been so lovely to be looking back at some of these performances and to hear your gorgeous interpretations of the partitas, Stephen, and talking a little bit about Bierman and our beautiful friend Emily Lodin, who we saw in the Beethoven, and just remembering all the people that we love and have loved and lost. And so thank you for hosting this evening. It's been really beautiful, and it's so good to be with all of you, even if at a distance. And we look forward to having you back in Victoria.
Thank
Likewise.
you,
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you.
You all. And if you've enjoyed what you heard tonight, we encourage you to make a donation at victoriabachfestival.org. And we have more great music ahead this week. And you can also view everything in archives. This has been a really rich experience. Our musicians are so creative, and just you can really see them putting themselves into creating this for you this week. So thank you for being a part of the 2020 Victoria Bach Festival, and more great music to come. Good night.
Good night.